hello everyone. Jumping into this now. Hi, this is DB Smiley. So I'm actually gonna kind of go behind the curtain a bit of my HGC stuff, and I know I'm looking over here, but that's just because that's where some parts of my monitor are. What I wanted to show off was kind of some behind the curtain stuff of how exactly I put together the HGC model. Now, keep in mind that I'm actually in the process of updating this. This was a kind of quick weekend hack about actually now a year ago. In fact, it was indeed over a year ago that I started this whole monster of a project. Here I am now. So how exactly do I kind of put all this together? I guess this is just a look behind the curtain at that. This is the Python code. This is the holy script. You can see it's just a kludgy mess of just horrible stuff. Additionally, I have a couple other files. So I have this ELO file. This is just my ELO library. So this is where I do the ELO calculations. Here's the magic ELO formula right there. And then from there, I have my team file. This is just an object file. Like I said, I'm planning on basically redoing this whole thing in Java. This is all on GitHub at the moment. github.com/pmcburne. Just revealing my identity a bit, but whatever the fuck. So this is part of it. This is, like I said, I'm not proud of this code at all. It's a kludge that I've been adding to. I mean, you can see I'm literally changing the values of global variables instead of using command line object. Like I'm working on it, but it's been like this for a year. So I'm actually rebuilding it from scratch. Over spring break, I teach for a living, so I actually wrote this fun story as a way to teach myself Python 3. I was familiar with Python 2 and Python. Oops, the title is still wrong. That is not accurate. Behind the ELO curtain. Kind of sounds like a political thriller. A look behind the ELO curtain. Something about Hungarian intrigue, no doubt. Where was I? So, all of this kind of just reads from a couple resource files, and then from there, a lot of kludges, but it produces kind of all the simulations that I need. How does this work? Well, I look at the parameters right now, and I'll highlight the relevant one. Here's input file. Notice this says NA Clash. Well, where does this file come from? So here is my Google Drive spreadsheet. This is every game in 2018 Part 1. So I have abbreviations. I have shorthand for each team that I've just kind of come into memory. So FZ is Feliz, GL Good Luck, TL Liquid, LO Leftovers, TP Tempest, KB KSV Black. And I memorized these, and this is just, I write all of these down. So this is every game. This is one of the files. And this is how I adjust the ELO, is I use this file. So, the way this works is every game gets recorded, every game affects a team's ELO. You can see the last game's Gale Force versus Heroes Hearth. But I include also China in here, so you can actually see, like, China. I use a certain notation for comments. Then from there, you can see here I actually have all the previous games. So this was Gold Club World Championship. But then from here, this is the starting ELO for the 2018 season. So this was calculated. There's actually a second spreadsheet that I'm not going to pull up just because I don't want to show off my drive folder and all the things in it. There's a second spreadsheet I used to calculate the starting ELO for each team. So this is just a static file that will last until post mid-season brawl, when I'll necessarily have to create another one because there'll be roster changes, there'll be teams dropping into, from the Crucible, from not. As I take a drink of Johnny Walker Black, the Breakfast of Champions. From here, what I have are a Korea file, a North America file, and an EU file. Now, I do have a China simulator, but that is actually in Java, and that is a separate thing. I wrote a simulator for Mid-Season Brawl last year, and then China changed its format in the fall, and it turns out that the Mid-Season Brawl simulator I had was much easier to adapt than the existing Python simulator. So I went with that. So to this end, I have every game listed for the season. So Zealots, Tricked. This was a 0 means the team in the first column has a 0% chance of winning, although not exactly. When you get down to 0.5, I'll explain. That gets handled by Elo. Like I said, this was a kludge. Initially, I was hard coding in values, simulation odds, and now it's not 0.5. It actually uses Elo to simulate. But so this meant that Tricked Esports won, and they won 3-1. So this is what my spreadsheets look like. Then from there, I have the same for NA, I have the same for Korea, and so when basically every match I update first this spreadsheet. So I go and I add like, hey, Gale Force won game 1, Heroes Hearth won game 2, Gale Force won game 3, Gale Force won game 4. Then I go over here and I say, okay, Gale Force won 3-1. So this is basically all the data entry I need to do. From there, I can just download the CSV. I also have a Korea Clash, North America Clash, and EU Clash. All this is this is just a dynamic copy of the first 28 rows of, like, Korea. So if I make a change here, let's say I change this number to 1, go back to Korea Clash, you'll see that gets updated to 1. Obviously, I haven't played yet, want to set that back to 0. So I download these files separately. This is, again, just because there's some kludges here. But it's also the data file. It makes sense to have separate data files for simulating the Clash and for simulating the mid-season brawl. So that's what I have. So I'm downloading these now. And I need to download Korea. So just downloading these as CSV. Then I go show in folder. You can see I just have a massive ton of files here. I'm going to delete the old ones so I don't mix these up. And then I just rename the files to what I need. I also download this file here. This is my games list again. And I just kind of have some predetermined names, so I just rename it to game. Or games, excuse me. Rename this to EU. Rename this to EU Clash. And I could probably do this programmatically. I'm sure there's a Python script that makes this way the fuck easier. But, again, this is all kind of a kludge, and I keep telling myself I'm going to redo it. So why improve the kludge when I can start fresh, now that I know kind of what the finished product needs to look like? I'm actually thinking of doing a 3-tiered architecture and trying to integrate this with an Android app, and then later, if Master League continues, I may try to integrate that API so it automatically updates and I can just live update from my phone. But we'll have to see. In the meantime, I then copy these. This is in Python 3, although it's kind of hacked together some data files. So there I just copy my files into my data folder. Yeah. So here it is. This is the whole ELO script. What do I want? I want the NA Clash, because I'm trying to figure out who's likely to get to the NA Clash. I want to get the top 4, because that's how many teams go to the Clash. And then I'm just going to leave this as is, and when I run the script, ignore all of this print. These are just tie conditions, and this is so that way I can look at a tie condition and try to derive who would win in that situation. So, for example, here's a 3-way unresolvable tie. Here's another 3-way tie, although this one is resolvable. Sorry. This is a 3-way tie potential for the top 3. This is a 3-way tie potential for 2nd through 4th. Here is a 3-way tie potential, again, 2nd through 4th. Actually, no, this one is... Sorry, this is a 3-way tie for 3rd and 4th. And then here it is, the beautiful 4-way tie. So this just, anytime it brings up a tie, it just prints that to the screen so I can analyze it and figure out who would advance. Anyway, so here are the odds right now. Now, this is based on, if you go on Heroes Hearth, my whole blog explains every team's path. Here is the situation in terms of who's likely to advance. And this does simulate sudden death matches if they come up. So what do we have? We have Tempo Storm is locked, 100%. This is again with ELO. Team 12, 99.25%. Team Freedom, 99.1%. Actually, I didn't simulate enough times. Yeah, I only simulated 10,000 times. I actually need to simulate 100,000. 100,000 tends to give me the most stable results. So let me rerun that. Obviously, 100,000, it's going to take a bit longer. 10 times longer, in fact. As I said, all this code is on GitHub, github.com/PMCBURNE. I just put it in chat there, so if you follow it, you can see under repositories HGC Predictor. This is actually, it's updated for what I have right now, because I did have to fix the tiebreakers. Alright, so 100% for Tempo Storm, 99.238 for Team 12, 99.131 for Team Freedom. So these three teams very probably going. I outlined again the path in how Team 12 and Team Freedom in my Heroes Hearth article, but just to show you how unlikely that is just on ELO, you know, again, less than 1% chance of not going. So now we go to 4th place. Looking at that, Heroes Hearth has a 79.9, so about an 80% chance of taking 4th place, or at least going to the Clash through 4th place or otherwise. Gale Force 21.4. The reason Gale Force is a bit lower, of course, is that while Gale Force has the head-to-head advantage over Heroes Hearth plays LFM. They should win. Gale Force plays Tempo Storm. They are favored to lose. So this takes into account the difficulty of the remaining schedule by simulating the ELO percentage. Simplicity, they are alive. They are 1/3%. But there it is, and I've explained that path as well. And then here are just some tie percentages. That is, you know, what are the odds that a tie shows up? Don't worry too much about this. This is just something that I do, so it helps me figure out tie situations. Alright, so now, question is, how do I take this? So what I do first is I take this, I copy and I paste it into this first sheet here. So here is where I paste it. And what I do is when I make my Heroes Hearth article, I'm just copying and pasting from this Google spreadsheet. Then I may be wondering, well, where do these ELO numbers come from? So one of the commands I have in this file, because again, this is kludgy as hell, is I have just get ELO, because I'm great at naming my variables. And if I set this to true, the game does no simulation at all. Instead, it just tells me where the current ELO scores are, and here they are. So you have Team Dignitas right now at the top, 1843. KSV Black, they were way out in front, but they've lost some matches, so they've pulled back to 1835. Ballistics climbed to 1777, Tempest 1713. Meth and Fnatic are there. The top NA team right now, Tempo Storm, 1556. Just to highlight the NA team since I've been talking about it. Team 12, second, 1505. Team Freedom, third, 1476. Gale Force, actually not far behind, 1466. A little bit ahead of Heroes Hearth, 1463. Then you jump down Simplicity, 1412. Space Station, 1400. And LFM down here at 1311. And all I do is I just copy this, and then I paste it in here. And when I make my Heroes Hearth article, this is where I pull it from. Getting a look behind the curtain. Alright, so now, how do I get the brawl percentages? Well, in this case, I'm not getting ELO. Let's say I want to get the odds of what NA team gets an automatic bid to brawl. Now, I don't have yet a method to simulate the playoffs for every simulation. So all I do right now is I look at seeding for the playoffs as well as who gets the automatic bid. Now, right now, the top 1 seed in North America It's an automatic bid. The only way they could be top 2 is if an NA team wins Western Clash. But I run... Oh, sorry, I still have that on NA Clash. It's actually just NA. So NA is the file that I want here. So now, I'm simulating NA. You'll notice I get a lot more ties, and that's because every team plays 14 games. You can see it there. And in this case, this tie is because Gale Force and Team 12 have the same record, and they've both traded matches with each other. A couple other ties show up. These are just interesting potential tie scenarios. But ultimately, can I simulate clash percentage without ELO? So you're talking about 50-50. Yes, I can do that. I'll do that in just 1 second, Goofy. But real quick, here's the brawl percentage. Now, keep in mind that because this is so distant in the future, ELO kind of has a disproportionate impact. I've thought about trying to model it so that way the ELO converges the further into the future simulation is, but I'm just not anywhere near that level of statistical prowess. So I copy, paste, and you can see that Tempo Storm very likely take the 1 seed at the moment. They are a game up, so it makes sense. But anyway, if you assume 50-50, well, how do I do that? Okay, good question. I'm going to go back to NA Clash, and I'm going to go back to top 4. Technically, it's not 50-50. It's like there's a 1 in 8 chance of a 3-0. Like I can't remember the exact math. It's I think 2 in 8 chance or 1-3. I don't know. I simulate the actual binary distribution, so it does work to actually simulate binary distribution. But what I want, if I don't want ELO, if I want 50-50, this bar that says calculate ELO, just change this variable to false. And now if what you'll see is if I get the ELO scores from here, file save, run, then everyone has 1500, which is the average. So from there, calculate ELO true, or I'll calculate ELO false, just get ELO false. When I run this, this is the result without any ELO taken into account, just 50-50. So again, it just has to simulate 100,000 things. Drink some whiskey while it's doing that. There we go. So here, even if you assume everything's 50-50, it still looks good for Team Freedom and Team 12, and it's just because it's all the possibilities of them going are very narrow. A lot of things have to happen. So Tempo Storm still 100%. In this case, Team Freedom 98.5. Team 12 97.8. Gale Force is actually favored over Team Freedom in this situation because if you don't take into account opponent difficulty, then Gale Force has an advantage on the basis that they have the head-to-head win. And so if they have the same map score or Gale Force has a better map score, Gale Force would advance in that situation. Simplicity's window actually widens a bit. But again, that's not taking into account ELO. Anyway. So now how do I do the Crucible? Well, as I said, I can basically get the top N with this. So what I actually want to get the Crucible is the top 6. Because the top 6 don't go to the Crucible. 7th and 8th do. So I go back to NA. I go to top 6. But then if I print this, it's going to say like 100% Tempo Storm, top 6. What I want is the percentage of a team going to Clash. So I just have this reverse percentage argument. I set that to true, and it will just subtract subtract all the percentages by 1. So it looks pretty good. Run this simulation. Here it's running. And, oops, moved over there. Still running. Again, this is all just to help me visualize ties. Alright, so here are the percentages. So LFM right now, according to ELO, 98.867% chance of going to the Crucible, given current trends. Space Station, 64.5. Simplicity, 34.6. Gale Force, 3.7. Heroes Hearth, 1.7. Tempo Storm, it's 0, but that just means that it was 0 times in the simulation. it is not mathematically a 0% chance that they go to Crucible. Like, if they had to forfeit every game from here on out, there's a small chance they would go. But even then, if they forfeited every game from here on out, you'd still need Space Station to win a bunch of games, for example, and Simplicity for that to happen. Alright, so now I can look at Korea, and Korea, I'm just going to keep it short because Korea is basically done. Pardon me. If I go to Korea Clash top 4, I don't want to reverse the percentages anymore. It's already 100%. I already know the results. It's locked for all of the Korean chances. So, waiting for it to finish running. Here you see 100% for the top 4, 0% for bottom 4. That's because Korea is done. There it is. From there, let's say I wanted to look at seeding. Let's say I wanted, because I believe the 1 seed is set. Let me check though. Korean Clash. So I can check who's likely to get the 1 seed. Run that. Again, it takes a bit. For the sake of showing this off, I'm actually going to reduce the number of trials down to just 10,000. Maybe makes the results less accurate. But so Tempest, 96% chance to take the 1 seed. Ballistics about 4%. That's it. They're the only teams that can take the 1 seed. No one else can. Additionally, if I want to say, like, okay, well, who's likely to get 2 seed? I set that to 2. Run it. And now you can see that Tempest and Ballistics, no matter what, they're the 1 and 2 seed. The order, there's a 5% chance it could be Ballistics Tempest, but it's set. That's how that works. If I want to see the 3 seed, this is where it gets potentially a bit more interesting. I run this. You can see that KSV Black heavily favored, but there is a small chance for Team Blossom to take the 3 seed. But worst case, the loser takes the 4, which will be Team Blossom almost certainly. Looking at Korea overall, if I want to see who's likely to get the auto bid, again, for now I'm assuming 1. But with the way the system works, whoever wins the Eastern Clash, if Korea wins the Eastern Clash, then they get 2 seeds for their region. So for Korean simulations, I'll say get the top 2. But in this case, you can see it's Tempest has actually moved up quite a bit. They're now the most likely team to take the 1 seed. Ballistics, KSV Black behind them. Ballistics very close. KSV Black, because of their losses, actually now a distant 3rd. But in no simulation did anyone else take it. That makes sense because, their ELO ratings are just much, much higher. By the way, if anyone asks questions in chat, I am watching it. I can try to simulate a scenario. I'll show you how I do that in a second. That one's pretty complicated. But for now, I'm just going behind the scenes a bit. So now, if I want to see, okay, who's likely to go to the Crucible in Korea, get the top 6, reverse the percentages. The reason I have to do this is the way HGC handles tiebreakers is it puts all the teams in a pot and it takes the best team out of the pot each time. And so the way the Crucible works is it's not starting at the bottom and taking the bottom teams, it's taking out the top 6. And the bottom 2 that are left over, those are the 2 that go to the Crucible. It doesn't seem like there's a difference there, but there is a distinction that matters in how some of the tiebreakers are handled. The Team Ace, Team Felice, right now they're struggling. Most likely to go to the Crucible by far. Miracle, though, actually did lose to Good Luck. Team Blossom, very small odds. Team Blossom, keep in mind, actually went to the Crucible in Phase 1 last year. So it's been fun to just watch that team continue to improve. And again, in no simulation do any of the top 3 go to the Crucible. Not to say it's not mathematically possible. It's so rare that simulating 10,000 times, it just doesn't happen. Then finally, we can go to EU. So in EU, let's go ahead and do EU Clash. Let's look at the top 4 there. We go, running the simulation. Again, not the full number of tests I usually do. I normally go 100,000, but for the sake of time, go 10,000. Here you can see Team Dignitas, Fnatic, Method, they are locked. There's no way they don't go. Team Liquid, most likely. This is because they both have a head-to-head advantage over Tricked and Zealots, but also a map advantage. So it's going to take pretty significant upsets for Team Liquid not to go. That or Team Liquid has to lose 0-3 and Trick manage to take 2 games off of Method if everyone loses. So I copy this and my sheet. I just kind of know where everything goes. Then from there, I want to get, okay, so now, given the current situation, who's likely to take the automatic bid? Top 1 seed, not for EU Clash. You. Just simulate it. Again, the simulations here taking ELO into account. And you can see Team Dignitas heavily favored. But for context, here's why that happens. Team Dignitas, as I showed before, is 1843 ELO. They're almost 200 points ahead of the next place team, and they're spotted to win. So they would have to lose at least 3 times in order to not take the number 1 spot, most likely. Unless map margin happens. But they would need to bare minimum lose twice and have Method and Fnatic win out. So the odds of them taking the 1 seed are very dominant unless they somehow collapse in the second half of the phase. So still a heavy favorite there, Team Dignitas. Again, with the caveat that I'm not doing as many simulations as I would normally do, just for the sake of showing this off. Going now into how we do EU Crucible. So look at, we want the top 6, and we want to reverse the percentages. File. Here you can see we do end up with a lot of crazy tie scenarios, but leftovers, not shockingly, 99.83% chance. Diamond Skin not far behind them. I actually think I still think Diamond Skin's a pretty good team. It's just that EU is brutal, and I think Diamond Skin would probably finish 3rd or 4th in America, if I'm completely honest. Unless North America has improved a lot. I don't know. We'll see here at the Western Clash. Controversial opinion time. All right, so now the question is, how do I look at tiebreaker scenarios? Well, one way I can do it is what I said at one point was, if Team Zealots loses, then they automatically can't go to the Clash. So how do I determine that? Well, I pull up, remember that data file I mentioned earlier? I pull up that data file, namely the EU Clash file. And what I can do is I can take this file, and I can say, well, let's simulate a situation where Dignitas loses. So let's say Dignitas loses, but they lose the best way they can. They lose 2-3. So this row just means, actually, I got that backwards. Dignitas wins 3-2. This means Dignitas beat Zealots 3-2. So how does that change the percentages? If this happens, Zealots loses, but they put up a really good fight. Well, let's find out. Simulate EU Clash. Let's look at the top 4 because we're most interested in who the top 4 teams are. I don't want to reverse the percentages, so false. And you can see that when I simulate this, you'll see that now Zealots, 0% chance. They can no longer go to the Clash. It's not possible anymore. So if they lose, even 2-3, it's not possible. Well, let's say that Dignitas, they intentionally throw to try to get Zealots, a team they know they can beat in the Clash. Not going to do it, but let's just say that happened. Okay, so 0-3. What are the odds now? Does Zealot lock? How do we find out? Well, I just changed this data, and once again I run the script. I see how the odds change. And now you'll see that Zealots is actually heavily favored. Why? Because Team Liquid is likely to lose to Fnatic, Tricked Esports likely to lose the Method. So in this situation, if Zealots is the only team to win, then Zealots does go. In this situation, Zealots 3-0's first game of the weekend, then all of a sudden they're likely to go. Using this, I can actually live update the simulation odds throughout the weekend, which is something I plan to do. So it's going to be fun. But yeah, this is it. I mean, this is the whole system. You know, you can download it here. It's on GitHub. I've had kind of a lot of fun putting this together, running it over the last year. I kept telling myself I was going to do some kind of explanation for this. This is the closest I've come. As I said, I mean, this code I'm going to completely gut and redo with some design patterns. Make it actually maintainable, make it easier to change the tiebreaker situations, because right now it's kind of a bear. One of the problems with Python is if you don't document your code, which I just didn't at all, it's really hard to maintain. Java, because it's so verbose, makes it a bit easier. But yeah, I guess any questions from anyone in chat? Any simulation situations you want to potentially try out? Like, oh, what if so-and-so beats such and such? Like, what are the odds? What's cool is I can even look in, like, Phase 2 games if I wanted to, but that doesn't really affect the Clash. So I guess anyone want to know, like, what happens if blank happens? What are the odds of Gale Force going if they beat Tempo Storm 3-2? Something like that. Otherwise, I mean, the stream's pretty much over, and I'm just watching the chat at this point. So any hypotheticals that you want to ask, like, what if Gale Force beats Tempo Storm 3-1? What are the odds? What has to happen for Sim to go? So I'm glad you're asking that. So here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to open up... Cats, stop fighting. My cats are fighting at the moment. They're pissed at each other for some reason. Alright, what has to happen? So how did I figure this out? Well, first, what I did was I noticed that when I run NA Clash Top 4. So I didn't actually work it out so much as I played around with this. So what happens for simplicity? So what I noticed was right out of the gate, if I run this, you'll see that simplicity, they're not 0. They have a chance. LFM, Space Station Gaming, they're 0%. Because of the number of trials I'm running, because that's 0%, that just means that they almost certainly don't have a mathematical chance. When ELO, if I really want to check, I turn off ELO, because if I turn off ELO, every game's 50-50, I'm more likely to get broader coverage than with ELO, which biases to the favorite team. So the question is, how do I get this number to 100%? So I generally, when I'm experimenting like this, I turn off ELO, just so I can, it gives me some intuition as if I'm heading in the right direction. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to assume, okay, best case scenario, simplicity beats Team Freedom 3-0. Absolute best case scenario. What happens? How likely is simplicity to go? Is that enough for them to clinch? Ran the wrong window. This is what you get for editing programs in idle. And in this case, you'll see that winning 3-0, even with ELO turned off, is only getting simplicity up to 9%. So a lot of things have to happen. So then, from there, I look at the standings. I see that, okay, if Simplicity wins, they move up to 3 match wins. That means no team, you can't have 4 teams with 3 match wins ahead of them. Or 4 teams with 4 match wins. Right now, 3 teams have at least 4 match wins. So that means that the other 2 teams with 3 match wins have to lose. And that is Gale Force and Heroes Hearth. So, let's say Gale Force loses 3-0, and Heroes Hearth loses 3-0 to LFM. Pretty unlikely, but let's run this. And what you'll see is that now Simplicity is 100% gonna go. So then what I can check, and this is something I never recommend doing, I can turn on this thing called Print Outcomes. And it's gonna look horrible. Okay, and then I'm just going to Control-C. So what this is this is a printout of basically all the teams, I believe. Is it? Yeah. So this is all of the top 4 teams. So here is the situation. I can print outcomes, and I can see a situation where this happens. Simplicity, in this case, is at 13-13. They have lost to Gale Force, Team 12, Tempo Storm, and Heroes Hearth. They have beaten Space Station LFM, and Team Freedom, they have 2 3-0 victories, 1 3-1, and 0 3-2 victories. And again, this is just because I wrote this so I know what prints where. This is a situation where they go. Now I can play around with it. I can look at the game difference, and what I realize is if Simplicity wins 3-1 rather than 3-0, I still get the same result. I'm going to turn off print outcome just because it makes the program take a billion times longer, and I mean that potentially. I'm not sure. But now you can see, even when it's 3-1, Simplicity still goes. Well, what about 3-2? Let's check that. So Simplicity wins. Oops, I didn't actually change that to 3-1. Let me rerun that with 3-1. There you go. Whoa. What did I do here? I changed something that I didn't mean to. Oh, that was it. Okay, sorry. I changed the wrong game for Simplicity. So there we go. When I changed Simplicity to 3-1 victory over Team Freedom, they're still 100%. If I then change them to 3-2 instead of 3-1, that is to say they only win by a single map, then what happens is, even though Gale Force and Heroes Hearth lose 0-3, sorry, I keep running the wrong window, then in this situation, Gale Force goes. Notice Simplicity, 0%. And this is because of map margin. Because I know Simplicity has lost to both Heroes Hearth and Gale Force, I'm now in a position where, even if Team Freedom wins 3-2, it's not enough. So in order for them to have a chance, they have to beat Team Freedom 3-1 or 3-0. And then from there I can work out, if they win 3-0, then Gale Force and Heroes Hearth have to lose 1-3, both, or 0-3. If Simplicity only wins 3-1, that gives them one less boost to their map score. Then Gale Force and Heroes Hearth both have to lose 0-3. Now, in this case, notice I didn't talk anything about Space Station versus Team 12. This game does not affect Simplicity at all. At all. But so yeah, that's the hypothetical. Any other hypotheticals, either for EU or for NA? No reason to go into Korea. As I said, top 4 is set in Korea. And like I said, I can't look at China. Plus, they're waiting for a stepladder playoff anyway. Any other questions about NA while I reset my file here? What is the lowest possible record a team could have to make an international tournament? So that one I can't cleanly say with the simulator, only because I haven't written a use case for it. If I poured over, so if I printed the outcomes and poured over the data, I could empirically try to determine that. But let's view this theoretically. Let's assume a clash counts as an international tournament. And the reason I say this is a clash, 4 teams from a region go. Let's assume the top 3 teams for a clash are all 6-1. They lose to each other, but they beat everyone else. 6-1. They all lose to one of the others. They all beat one of the others. 6-1. So at max, when you have 56 games, you're going to have a total of 56 wins and 56 losses. So if you have 18 wins already, no, you don't have 56, you only have 28, excuse me. You have 28 wins because it's only half season, it's not a double round robin. For Clash, it's a single round robin. So if there's already 6 wins claimed, so that's 28 minus 16, that's 12 wins. Divide that among 5 teams, and I think you could have a team go to internationals. Yeah, you could have a team go to internationals with 3 wins. It would be impossible for them to go to internationals with 2 wins, just on the pigeonhole principle. The pigeonhole principle being that those 2 wins, if you distribute the teams, at least one team of those bottom 5 has 3 wins. In fact, at least 2 teams, just by the pigeonhole principle. So for the Clash, it would be 3 wins. Extrapolate that out. If I had to guess, then you'd be in a similar situation. Top 3 teams, 14-2. Not 14-2, excuse me. Does Diamond Skin have a chance? No, Diamond Skin does not have a chance. So let's take this. Think about the math here. Top 3 teams heading into a brawl are... actually, no. You know what? Here it is. Mid-season brawl, right? So here's why. Because you only have to win through the stepladder playoff. So during the regular season, you only need to be 6th. And so to be 6th place, you would only need to do better than the 2 teams below you. So that means you would need, assuming they both beat each other once and lose to each other once, you would only need, in that case, you would have to beat them both 4 times, but I think with tiebreaker, you can get it down to 3, where you win 3 times in the regular season and finish 6th, and then win your way through the stepladder playoff to mid-season brawl. So there it is. You could theoretically imagine it would be possible. Of course, if you only win 3 games, you're probably not very good at the video game, and so you probably would not go and win your way through the stepladder playoff. Any other hypotheticals anyone want to ask about NA or EU? Because I'm fine sitting here drinking scotch. Any other hypotheticals? Alright, well. This has in fact been a look behind the curtain. Something I wanted to do for a while. Finally got bored enough to do it. Got less busy enough to do it. What are the chances LFM doesn't get to Crucible? Well, it's the inverse of the chances they are going. And according to my simulation, again, this takes ELO into account. Now, keep in mind, ELO assumes a team's skill level won't change relative to other teams. So if LFM continues to improve, which we have seen them improve, you would expect this to overestimate their chance to go to the Crucible. But right now, their chance to go to the Crucible is 98.9%. So their chance of not going is 1.1%. But if they improve, then they could decrease those odds. Again, one of the thing about ELO is it is descriptive, not prescriptive. By that I mean, it tells you how a team has done. And by inductive reasoning, we then assume how they're going to do. But that induction assumes that things that happened in the past are likely to be reflective of things that will happen in the future. But if a team has a sudden improvement, which we've seen in the past, we saw that with Team Freedom between Phase 1 and Phase 2 of last season, where they actually were in a position to potentially go to mid-season brawl if they won a couple of games in the stepladder playoff. Team Freedom improved a lot over the last year. Remember that they narrowly dodged the Crucible. But then also a team like Gale Force, they did extraordinarily well in Phase 1 of the fall season. Took first place, dropped to 3rd place, and then didn't actually make BlizzCon because they lost in the playoff. So these odds can change. They're just descriptive of what has happened. And I'm using inductive reasoning to assume it's going to influence what happens in the future, with full knowledge that change can happen. What has to happen for that not to be true? For LFM to not go to the Crucible? They have to win games. They have to improve, and they have to win a lot of matches. And if they do that, then they'll avoid the Crucible. Now, one of the things to note is they have to pass both Space Station and Simplicity, potentially, although, again, maybe Simplicity takes off in Phase 2, and then they have to pass, say, Heroes Hearth. So the problem that LFM has is they only have 1 match win, where Space Station Gaming has 2. That means they have to win, because of the loss head-to-head, they have to beat Space Station Gaming or win 2 other matches to pass them. And then with Simplicity, they potentially have to do the same thing. Any other hypotheticals? Alright. So with that, I'm gonna draw this cast to a close. because I want to listen to some killer music and I don't want to be muted. Thanks for watching. And now you see the ELO rankings. I will try to get this article up tonight, realistically tomorrow morning, because I have to finish homeworks, grading stuff tonight. So I teach computer science for a living. So this was actually just my way of, like, the main reason I wrote this was I need to get comfortable with Python 3.0 because I was used to Python 2.7. And I don't like Python 3.0. I don't love Python for complex software. I love it for quick scripting. For anything like that has gotten as large as this has gotten, I really want to do something like Java, a very verbose language that gives me a lot of abstraction tools. So I'm actually looking at re-implementing this. I've already started kind of writing up my design. I need to get a whiteboard in my office, but I might be mounting a whiteboard. Not a good idea if I'm going to move. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Take care. DB Smiley, out.